Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sack Race Weekly. A huge week in the managerial arena. Frank Lampard has been sacked by Chelsea. In comes Thomas Tuchel. Then in the Championship we've seen Mick McCarthy return. He's replaced Neil Harris at Cardiff. We're going to look at 5 future options for Frank Lampard. We're going to then answer your questions that you submitted. And then we're going to see whether Big Sam is on his last legs already at West Brom. Frank Lampard sacked by Chelsea on Monday. Thomas Tuchel came in as his replacement, but we're backing Frank to bounce back. Here are 5 options for him, starting with Crystal Palace. Roy Hodgson, currently his contract lasts until the summer. There's been no sign of whether he's going to sign a new deal, so we're going to go with that at the moment. Frank Lampard, Crystal Palace in the summer. How does that sound, Simon?
Yeah, in fairness, I think despite his lack of managerial experience, I would put Frank Lampard in the sort of Eddie Howe category of his next job should be a Crystal Palace or a Newcastle. I think Palace might actually get rid of Hodgson before the end of the season if they drift any closer to the relegation zone. It's not been a great month or so for them in terms of results, and they are slipping down the table towards that bottom 3. So yeah, I think I'd like Hodgson to keep his job to the end of the season. For his entire career, he's been a very respectable manager. You know, he's reaching that sort of age where you think retirement could be a possibility. And Frank Lampard would provide a serious excitement, I think, to the Crystal Palace team. I think you've got to remember, despite his struggles this season with the big signings, what Frank Lampard did last season when he had that tight-knit squad almost, he couldn't bring anyone in, was really impressive. Obviously they reached, they made the top 4, which was the main aim for Chelsea that season. So yeah, I think Palace is a good fit as well as Newcastle.
11-2 for that one to happen. Newcastle, you just mentioned that is our second choice. Steve Bruce, the odds-on favourite. He hasn't won in 11 games now. He's under so much pressure, but there's still a gap between Newcastle and the relegation zone. And so long as there's that gap, I think Mike Ashley is going to stay with him. But if he doesn't, this one could be potentially another summer one. Could Lampard be the man to wake the sleeping giant, or at least bring back some excitement?
I think he could bring back some excitement. I'm not sure he'd be the man to drive them fully up the table. He just needs a bit more experience. And if that comes in the Premier League, that'll be all credit to him and a good thing for his CV, certainly. I think for Newcastle, they need an exciting manager, don't they? I think under Rafa, they had this exciting big name manager. Maybe they can go for someone a bit younger, someone who can bring a bit more creativity to St James's Park. To be honest, I think Steve Bruce won't last the season, and I've got massive respect for him and what he's achieved, especially in the Championship during his career. But I think the tide has already turned at Newcastle. The fans are so unhappy. I think he's probably benefiting from the fact there aren't any fans in the stadium at the moment. Results are pretty poor. They are sliding towards the bottom 3 as well. Mike Ashley, he's not known for sacking managers quite like Roman Abramovich is, but I think he will probably have to make a change before the season is out. And then if Lampard's still out of work, I think he'd be a good option.
8-1 for that one. Celtic, he's been linked with 2. 6-1 to replace Neil Lennon, who, despite their terrible form and just giving away the title to Rangers, he too looks like he's going to keep his job until the end of the season. Simon, could you see Frank go north of the border and spark up a stunning rivalry against Gerrard, the Rangers manager, of course?
I think this is what we all want to see, isn't it, in Scotland? Imagine a Frank Lampard versus Steven Gerrard title race. I think Celtic, I'm not sure they'd go for him, to be truthfully honest. I think they could attract a higher calibre, a more experienced manager, but we've seen the success that Steven Gerrard has had at Rangers. It's been fantastic from him this season. I think we can assume they've definitely won their title. 20 plus points clear, aren't they, at the moment? And that lead just only looks like growing at the moment up in Scotland. So imagine setting up a Gerrard versus Lampard rivalry. They didn't get on too well as players. Remember Gerrard, when he was talking about Lampard losing his job at Chelsea, he called him an ex-friend, which is an amazing phrase, which I'm definitely going to use in my life from now on. So I think this rivalry is just set up to be absolutely perfect, isn't it?
You might need to get some friends first, but I did think he meant ex-teammate, but who knows? It's pretty savage if he meant ex-friend. Number 4, Simon, into the Championship, where he has, of course, managed before at Derby, led them to the playoff final. Do you think now he's managed in the Premier League, he's managed in the Champions League, do you think he could step down into the Championship? And if so, where?
It's really tough, isn't it? Obviously, his experience in the Championship was decent. He got Derby to the playoffs, but they were probably expected to get to the playoffs. But as you say, this is a manager who's reached the top four in the Premier League. He's managed some of the most expensive talents in the world in recent years. He reached the top four. He reached the Champions League. He managed in the Champions League. Would he take his next drop in the Championship? I don't think so, to be honest. I think it would be a massive coup for any Championship side if they would get hold of him, just because of his experience at Chelsea. I can't think of any other Chelsea managers who have gone straight into the Championship as managers, so that would be massive for them. Final point on that, I can't see it happening. I think his next job will be one of the teams we've already mentioned so far.
Roberto Di Matteo did, of course, dip into the Championship not too long after leaving Chelsea, but he lasted 12 games at Villa, and that one was a shocker. Simon, how about the MLS? We've got Jaap Stam, Phil Neville, Thierry Henry, Struber, of course, who managed Barnsley. They're all over there. Their season's starting quite soon. So there aren't any jobs up for grabs at the moment. But could Frank, who played in the MLS before, could he return there in the future as manager?
Yeah, in the future for sure. I don't think it'll be his next job, but of course he's got that link as however tenuous it is with Manchester City. He played those games and scored against Chelsea for them. So by that connection, he's got a connection with New York City FC. Of course, they've already got their manager in place and we're just approaching the season now. So I think Frank, it'll be a few years before he heads off to the MLS. I still think it's an emerging league. We are seeing some bigger players and some bigger managers certainly be attracted there. But no, I think his next job will be on these shores, certainly.
There's also a job going at Borussia Dortmund, of course, but I think they're going to get the Mönchengladbach manager, Marco Rose. Simon, have you got any wild cards to finish up on?
Not really, no. For me, Frank Lampard, his wild card for me would be having a bit of a sabbatical, having a few months with his family, maybe taking until the end of the season off and seeing what his options are in summer. But I think, as many people have said, Frank Lampard wants to get straight back on the horse, back into football. So one of these jobs could become available and he'd be one of the front runners to get it. For me, I think he would be best going for... I'd love to see him at Newcastle or Celtic, to be honest. Those are my two favourites.
We've mentioned it in the past with Eddie Howe, but potentially going to the international arena with England under-21s. Eddie Boothroyd is under a little bit of pressure there. So if a vacancy opened up there, Frank Lampard would be great. He's shown he can develop young players. So we'll see how that one plays out. On to section 2. Thank you very much for all of you who sent in your questions this week. We're going to start off with Frank Lampard. I know we just discussed him, but we've got a relevant question here from L. Bretland. L said, this is a two-parter. Do you think Frank Lampard would have been wise to do 5 or so years in the Championship rather than just a single campaign? I think, yes, in an ideal world, he would have spent at least a few seasons there, hopefully won promotion with them and then got some experience managing in the Premier League. But personally, I don't think he could have turned Chelsea down. Who knows, he may not have done well at Derby and then have taken a step back. But I thought he had to go for it, really. It didn't quite go to plan, but I don't think he's ruined his reputation or anything. Simon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're completely on the right lines there, Jack. I mean, if the Chelsea job came along for Frank Lampard after one season at Derby, he has to take it. He'd be an idiot not to if he was offered that. It's such a huge step up, and obviously he backed himself as a manager, what he'd learnt so far. And he did a reasonable job. His CV is only stronger for his experience at Chelsea. As you say, Derby, look what happened to them this season. It hasn't been great at all. That could have been Frank Lampard in the dugout, taking charge of this Derby team, kind of falling down the Championship table, and then he would have had no chance of managing Chelsea or in the Premier League. So it was a great job for him to be offered. He had to take it. Ideally, he would have spent longer in the Championship, as you say, and perhaps won promotion to the Premier League. But you can't turn down the Chelsea job, can you?
Second part of the question, Elliot says, do you believe the best players make the best managers in the Football League? Well, if we look at the wider picture, of course, we've seen Guardiola, Zidane, Conte, Pochettino. These managers do very well in the big European leagues. But dipping down into the Football League, at the moment, you've got Wayne Rooney just starting out. We'll see how that goes. You've got Harry Kewell at Oldham, Lee Bowyer at Charlton, Hasselbank at Burton. He previously did well at Burton, of course. Paul Lambert had a brilliant career. He's had a pretty good managerial career. He's had a little blip at Ipswich, but he's still won promotions in the past. Karanka's at Birmingham, Chris Hughton's at Forest. But we have seen plenty of examples of high-profile former players come into the Football League, have one short stint and never return. Sheringham, Chris Sutton, Paul Merson, Gascoigne had a few in non-league as well. Paul Ince started off pretty well, won a few promotions, got a job with Blackburn in the Premier League, but has since not managed in a while and didn't do too well in his previous jobs anyway. Simon, what do you reckon? Do you believe the best players make the best managers in the Football League?
It's a really good question, this one. I think, to be honest, if you're a better player, a bigger name player, you're more likely to get a chance, as we've seen with Lampard and Gerrard, etc. So by that metric, I think probably yes, you're more likely to get a job higher up the pyramid and have the chance to prove yourself. It's a really tough one. I think, to be honest, there's little correlation between how good you are as a player and how good you are as a manager, in my opinion. I think, as you mentioned, the names that came to mind for me were the likes of Teddy Sheringham. Paul Ince really didn't deliver for me in the Football League, and they were brilliant players, of course. Frank Lampard has done decent in the last few years, and obviously Steven Gerrard smashing it at Rangers. So I don't think there's any correlation, to be honest. I'd like to see maybe a few lesser known players get the chance, and perhaps that's what we'll see over the next couple of years after we've seen all these high profile players get the job. It seems like a game of Football Manager at the moment in real life, so let's see where we go with this one. I think there's little correlation, to be honest.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. You've seen so many big players recently get big jobs with no experience to their name. Then you look at people like Chris Wilder, started right at the bottom non-league, and he's worked his way up through every single division. And last night he won at Old Trafford. The great escape is on. We'll see how that one goes, Simon. On to another question. We're going to put these two together. We've got Christopher and Kath Jones. Christopher says, simply, Sheridan's time up. Kath says, when will Sheridan get the boot? Now, they've had 3 wins from 15 games, Sheridan, since his surprise appointment. He replaced Richie Wellens last year. They're in the relegation zone now. He's been slating his players recently. He's saying they shouldn't be in the Premier League. I'm not sure where all these comments are coming from. They've got a court case coming up as well, I think. What have you made of Sheridan so far?
To be truthful, he is. That's probably going to get bleeped out. I was so surprised he got the Swindon Town job. You compare the work Richie Wellens was doing at the club and the fact he got them to grow and develop and came up from League 2, winning promotion. They were playing some brilliant football. Wellens Ball, it got named. It's such a blow to lose him at this stage of Swindon's kind of development and growth. But to replace him with a manager who's on the other end of the spectrum for me in terms of footballing style and management style as well. Wellens was kind of this friendly but firm coach. John Sheridan is certainly just a firm coach, and it's just not working. I think Swindon are playing mainly a 4-4-2. It's very basic stuff in terms of a tactical approach from Swindon at the moment, and it's not paying off. You mentioned they're in the relegation zone. They don't look like they're going to get out of danger with Sheridan in charge. I was very surprised when he got the job. I didn't think it would be this bad. Yeah, I've not been impressed at all, and I never want to see any manager lose their job, but for Swindon's sake, I think they need to make a change sooner rather than later, especially with the stuff you mentioned going on behind the scenes as well.
There could be a scenario where Richie Wellens takes Salford up to League 1 and Sheridan comes down with Swindon to League 2. Swindon fans don't want to bear thinking about that one though. Simon, section 3, just quickly run through a few of the vacancies and then the odds in the next Premier League manager to leave market. Steve Bruce, who we've talked about in previous videos, the odds-on favourite. It's not looking great for him, but he clings on to his job. The big mover is Sam Allardyce, who's gone from 20-1 to 5-1. He's the second favourite for the chop. He's only been in the job for about 6 weeks. Could he actually leave West Brom before the end of the season?
No, not for me. I think Allardyce is the man to get West Brom out of danger. If anyone is, I think he's been there. He's done it, and I don't think a 5-0 defeat at home to Man City changes any of that. He had that amazing result against Wolves, which was far more important than a expected loss against Manchester City. They'll be fine, I think. Well, I don't know if they'll be fine. Sam Allardyce will be fine, and he's the right man to try and get them out of danger.
He's got 2 massive games coming up, Fulham and Sheffield United. And when they were last in the Premier League, they did sack 2 managers, Tony Pulis and Alan Pardew. So maybe Sam Allardyce should be a little bit nervous. Sheffield Wednesday, Simon. Paul Cook has rejected a short-term contract. We're huge fans of him here, but that dream looks to have died now. Neil Thompson is the odds-on favourite. Have they messed this one up a bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think if Paul Cook was at all interested in the job, you've got to offer him what he wants, get him on a long-term contract and see what he can do. Even if you get relegated down to League 1 as a Wednesday fan, we've seen him get promoted from League 1 before, and he would be the man to try and take them up. So I think Paul Cook was the standout candidate. Now it looks likely he's not going to get the job. I'd be surprised if Neil Thompson continues as he is. I think I watched Sheffield Wednesday this midweek losing 2-0 to Coventry, and they were really poor. I know he's favourite to take the job, and his recent results have been really good before that game, but they lost to Everton in the FA Cup, then they've lost to Coventry in a key relegation 6-pointer, and I think Wednesday are really in trouble, and I don't think the chairman's got a clue what he wants, and I don't think he's got a clue what he's doing, to be truthful.
Elsewhere, we've got Anthony Barry, the Chelsea coach, who took training when Frank Lampard left this week. He's now the odds-on favourite to return to Fleetwood as manager. He did play for them, won a couple of promotions. He's coached under Paul Cook at Wigan and, of course, Frank Lampard at Chelsea. And in Port Vale, their owners have come out and said they want a manager with a proven record of success, and they've ruled out Danny Pugh, the interim boss, getting it, but they do want him to stay at the club. Graham Coughlin is still the favourite for that one. You can check out all the odds on thesackrace.com.